Dear students, welcome you all for our lecture series on agrochemicals and pest control. In today's episode, we are going to discuss about the topic pest control methods. Let us see introduction. A general term for organisms like rats, insects, etc., which may cause illness or damage or consume food crops and other materials important to humans. An organism that is considered a nuisance to man, most usually having pathogenic properties. Pest control is the process of minimizing or removing a wide range of undesirable insects and other pests from spaces occupied by people. The public are often concerned about the use of pesticides and not always presented with a balanced view. It is important to be able to provide reassurance about research and safety aspects and to remind ourselves to keep pests under control. If left to their own devices, weeds, pests and diseases will damage the health and appearance of cultivated plants to a greater or lesser extent. The situation tends to be made worse by the way in which we grow plants. As gardeners by crowding a mixture of plants into a small plot, or as farmers by growing a large area of the same crop. To successfully control insects and insect-like pests, you need a thorough knowledge of their habitats, feeding habits, and life cycle stages. Hence, in this episode, the following aspects are going to be seen: host plant resistance, cultural control, biological control, chemical control, and integrated control. Let us see the first aspect, host plant resistance. Pest resistance is any inherited characteristic of a plant host that prevents the attack by the pest or lessens its effects. Planting resistant cultivars when available is one of the most effective, economical and environmentally safe tactics. Host plant resistance can be broken down into three categories: non-preference, antibiosis and tolerance. Non-preference, also known as anti-xenosis. Host plants that express non-preference affect the way an insect pest perceives the desirability of the host plant. Non-preference plants either provide stimuli that are unattractive to the pest or fail to provide stimuli that are attractive to the pest. In this way, non-preference plants affect the behavior of pests. Antibiosis. Antibiosis is a type of resistance in which the host plant causes injury, death, reduced longevity or reduced reproduction of the pest. Often, both a resistant and susceptible variety will have the same basic response to a pest, but the resistant variety will respond more quickly or more dramatically than the susceptible variety, reducing the amount of damage the pest causes. Plants that express antibiosis affect the biology of pests. Tolerance. Host plants that express tolerance are resistant to pest damage because they can remain healthy and yield well despite the damage. These plants must also be able to heal wounds and fight diseases that enter through wounds. The effectiveness of host plant resistance can vary by location, because insect pests of the same species can vary somewhat by location. For instance, a Colorado potato beetle in Colorado is slightly different than a Colorado potato beetle in Wisconsin. Let us see the second aspect, cultural control. Cultural controls are the oldest methods that have been used to manage pest populations. However, with the development of synthetic pesticides, these controls were rapidly abandoned or de-emphasized, and research on them was largely discontinued. Because cultural controls are preventive rather than curative, and they are dependent on long-range planning. Also, they are dependent on detailed knowledge of bioecology of the crop, pests, natural controls, environment relationships, most of which in the past were poorly understood. The results were very variable and it was often difficult to evaluate their effectiveness. Today, the situation is different from those early days of pest control. We have a much better understanding of the bioecological relationships within crop systems. Predictive computer models are available for some pests, and the social climate is demanding reduced dependence on toxic chemicals to solve problems. Such concerns have developed as a result of numerous pesticide accidents, detection of residues in recreational environments, drinking water, foods, and human tissues, the increase in the incidence of pesticide-related allergy and petrochemical sensitivity, the growing interest in the relationships between food quality and human health, the decreasing effectiveness of many pesticides as more and more pests become resistant to them, and their increasing costs. Many farms are already using cultural controls like planting resistant or tolerant varieties, improving soil health, and other methods. There are other simple solutions to consider in the area of cultural controls to manage plant pests. Improving soil health. There are many ways to improve the soils on the farm. One of the best ways is to increase organic matter levels. Although leaves and manure may help to increase your organic matter levels, a more effective method is to grow cover crops with high biomass production. Proper planting dates. Setting out transplants too early or too late can cause unnecessary stress to the young plants. Plant resistant or tolerant varieties. Many new varieties being released have some type of pest resistance. Resistance or tolerance to an insect or disease is usually listed next to the variety in seed catalogs, or the seed salesman can provide more information. Using resistant or tolerant varieties is a good way to control pests in the field. Varieties that do not tolerate cold or hot conditions for a certain region should not be grown for commercial production in the region. Crop rotation. Planning crop rotation is a long-term project and can be a key way of culturally controlling pests. Because different plant families are hosts to different plant diseases and insect pests, some problems can be avoided by planting non-susceptible crops. Many rotations should be prolonged for more than one growing season. Some soil-borne diseases may take up to 5 or more years to suppress through crop rotation. Avoid working in wet fields. Any activity in a wet field can spread fungal spores or bacteria throughout a field. Tractors that brush plants down a row or workers moving from plant to plant will easily spread disease organisms that are in the water on plants. It is best to wait until the field dries before working in the field. Do not introduce pests. Before planting, look over the transplants to check for insects or diseases. Make sure the seed you buy is certified and treated properly. Cleaning your tillage equipment before traveling into a new field is important. Wash off any soil or plant debris from your tractor or equipment with a sanitizing agent like chlorine. Also, cleaning hand tools like pruning, shears, hoes, rakes or shovels can help reduce the spread of soil-borne disease. Use mulch as a soil covering. Using plastic or organic mulches to cover the soil will help to control weeds and may reduce the spread of soil diseases. Remember, some plastic mulches will not be good at controlling weeds. By having the soil covered, fungal and bacterial disease organisms may not be splashed up onto the plant. Be cautious about using some organic mulches that may utilize high amounts of nitrogen during decomposition or may help to encourage some unwanted pests like rodents. Practice good sanitation. Keeping fields free of weeds or infested or infected plants is a way to reduce plant stress and pest spread. Weeds are prolific seed producers and one plant can produce thousands of seeds for next year's weed crop. A plant that is dying from a disease should be removed from the field to reduce the source of inoculum to other plants. When removing these infected plants, make sure they are disposed of far away from the crop field so that wind or water will not transport the spores from the discarded plants. Encourage beneficial organisms or enemies. Planting buffer strips to create environments for insects like ladybugs, lacewings and other beneficial insects can help to control insect pests in a natural way. Reducing the amount of unnecessary chemicals can help beneficial microorganisms and earthworms in soils. Scout fields for problems before they are out of hand. Taking the time to inspect fields for pests and other problems is an important step in preventing widespread problems. When a problem in the field is first spotted, it needs to be identified quickly and a control plan needs to be implemented immediately. Contact the local extension office as soon as possible if you need further information. Once the field is decimated, controls are not an option and the field is lost. Let us see the third aspect, biological control. Biological control is a component of an integrated pest management strategy. It is defined as the reduction of pest populations by natural enemies and typically involves an active human role. Keep in mind that all insect species are also suppressed by naturally occurring organisms and environmental factors with no human input. This is frequently referred to as natural control. This guide emphasizes the biological control of insects, but biological control of weeds and plant diseases is also included. Natural enemies of insect pests, also known as biological control agents, include predators, parasitoids, and pathogens. Biological control of weed includes insects and pathogens. Biological control agents of plant diseases are most often referred to as antagonists. There are three broad and somewhat overlapping types of biological control: conservation, classical biological control and augmentation. Conservation. A variety of management activities can be used to optimize the survival and effectiveness of natural enemies. Conservation activities might include reducing or eliminating insecticide applications to avoid killing natural enemies, staggering harvest dates in adjacent fields or rows to ensure a constant supply of hosts, or providing shelter, overwintering sites or alternative food sources to improve survival of beneficial species. Classical biological control. It is a long-lasting and inexpensive, other than the initial costs of collection, importation and rearing, little expense is incurred. When a natural enemy is successfully established, it rarely requires additional input and it continues to kill the pest with no direct help from humans and at no cost. Unfortunately, classical biological control does not always work. It is usually most effective against exotic pests and less so against native insect pests. The reasons for failure are often not known, but may include the release of too few individuals, poor adaptation of the natural enemy to environmental conditions at the release location, and lack of synchrony between the life cycle of the natural enemy and host pest. Augmentation. Natural enemies that are unable to survive and or persist in a new environment can sometimes be reared in large numbers and periodically released to suppress a pest population. In some cases, small numbers of a beneficial species are released in several critical locations to suppress local pest outbreaks. In other cases, larger numbers are released in a single location to flood the pest population with natural enemies. Let us see the fourth aspect, chemical method. The most common method of pest control is the use of pesticide chemicals that either kill pests or inhibit their development. Pesticides are often classified according to the pest they are intended to control. For example, insecticides are used to control insects, herbicides to control weeds, fungicides to fungi, rodenticides to rodents, avicides to birds, and bactericides to control bacteria. Pesticides also include chemosterilants and growth regulators, which are used to interfere with the normal reproduction or development of the pest. Semiochemicals, chemical control of behavior. Much of an insect's behavior is mediated by chemicals in its environment. By turning these chemicals to our own advantage, it is often possible to attract pests to traps or bites, or repel them from our homes, our crops, or our domestic animals. Behavioral messages are delivered by a wide array of chemical compounds. As a group, these groups are known as semiochemicals. In some cases, they may facilitate communication between the members of a single species. Example, pheromones are between members of different species. Example, allelochemicals. Functionally, semiochemicals may have a wide range of activity. They may serve as attractants or repellents. They may stimulate or inhibit feeding. They may provoke flight or inhibit it, or they may simply elicit behavior patterns at inappropriate times. Chemosterilants, chemical control of reproduction. There are over 400 chemical substances that are known to cause reproductive sterility in insects. Some of these compounds inhibit ovarian growth and development, while others appear to induce fundamental changes in the chemical structure of nucleic acids. These changes prevent cell division or obstruct normal embryonic development. Chemosterilants belong to several major chemical groups. These compounds are applied directly to the insect or incorporated into food that serves as bite. Insect growth regulators, chemical control of development. The enzymes and hormones that regulate developmental processes within an insect's body can sometimes be exploited as chemical control weapons. These compounds, often known as insect growth regulators (IGR), can be used to stimulate development at inappropriate times or inhibit it at other times. Conventional insecticides, the killer chemicals. Conventional insecticides are among the most popular chemical control agents because they are readily available, rapid acting, and highly reliable. A single application may control several different pest species and usually forms a persistent residue that continues to kill insects for hours or even days after application. Because of their convenience and effectiveness, insecticides quickly became standard practice for pest control during the 1960s and 1970s. Overuse, misuse, and abuse of these chemicals have led to widespread criticism of chemical control and, in a few cases, resulted in long-term environmental consequences. Let us come to the fifth and last aspect of this topic, integrated control. Just as ground, air, and naval forces are integrated to achieve military objectives, the tactical weapons of pest control can also be integrated to achieve more effective management of pest populations. Development of resistance, effects on non-target organisms, and damage to the environment can all be minimized with selective and judicious use of multifaceted control tactics. This approach, commonly known as integrated control, requires an understanding of ecological principles as well as a thorough knowledge of pests' life history and population dynamics. Let us come to conclusion. Pest population is methodology, management to control pest which is done through techniques and programs. The types of pest and control are the part of knowledge and competency. Structure of building and location is a primary step to control pest. Cleaning, sanitary chemical agents and sealing all access points can help you to control pest at first stage. Some eco-friendly and herbal treatment must be adopted at initial stage through glue trap, boxes and equipments. Out of control, pest required need of pesticides and poison bite. The usage of heavy dosage chemical can affect your health. Before selecting pest control methods, you hire a trained person for better results. This is all about the topic pest control methods. So, students, hope you enjoyed this session. We will meet in the next episode. Thank you.